Well, hello there. This is Craig Hain, and this is going to be chapter number 3 of the book How and Why Homeschool Math Can Be Vastly Superior to Public School Math. And this is published by Triad Math Inc. This is the first edition, and as I told you, I am Craig Hain, the author of this book. So let's take a look at chapter 3. Now, this is going to be the longest chapter in this book, so it's going to be the longest video probably. And the title is How to Give Your Child a Great Education in Algebra, Geometry, and Trigonometry, and Beyond. Now, I'm going to assume that you have watched the preface and the introduction and Chapter 1 on spike pedagogy, because that's really a foundation to understand what's going to be in Chapter 3. Chapter 2, of course, was for parents that had struggling students. This chapter is for a parent who has a student who likes math and wants to give this student the very best possible math education. In fact, one that is vastly superior to what the public schools deliver. And you'll understand why that is before this chapter is over. Now, we explain this in our ebook that has the same title as this, How to Give Your Child a Great Education. And you can get a free copy of that at Homeschooler Today by clicking on the Free Resources tab and then the Educational tab, and then go to the ebook choices and download that ebook. But the question that you might ask is, well, why would you want to give your child a great math education? And why would your child even want it? Well, here's one of the reasons that we give on the ebook webpage before you download the ebook. Math for success. Whether your student is entering the workforce, or the military, or is college bound, or for that matter is a future STEM student, then you're going to need a modern math curriculum that's going to fully prepare your student for their future life. Now, this is a huge responsibility, but fortunately, it's very easy to achieve today, thanks to modern technologies and resources like I'm going to be telling you about. And that's true even if you don't know very much math, or even if you don't like math, which a lot of parents don't. In fact, that's the common situation. Most parents don't know very much math, and many don't like it. Now, here are some of the questions and answers that any parent and child will need to know the answers to if they want to achieve math success, and they want to do it in an efficient and affordable way. Now, this is going to be a pretty long discussion. Why is math so important? Well, in a nutshell, math will open up many doors of opportunity for your child that otherwise remain closed. Actually, math is kind of like a special universal language, and it's necessary for understanding many things in life and communicating many things in life. Math is really an indispensable tool that you need to learn and use any modern technologies, most modern technologies. Now, you might have heard of STEM subjects. STEM is an acronym, stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And it's widely known that if you do have a STEM career, that can be quite lucrative and satisfying. Mathematics now, at some level, underlies all STEM subjects. So if your child has any aspirations for a STEM career, then certainly your child needs a good math education. And I must say, beyond what they're going to get in any high school today. As a matter of fact, many STEM careers require advanced education in science and engineering skills, and that requires math competency to even get started. But more than that, let's say your child isn't really interested in STEM, maybe not even interested in college. Well, there's hundreds of thousands of jobs that are going unfilled today in our modern manufacturing economy. And that's the reason, is because there's not enough qualified people available to them. In fact, way back in 2012, the Boston Consulting Group estimated that there was 600,000 jobs going unfilled in our manufacturing world, and I think it's even more today. Healthcare is quite similar too. You need to know that there are many, very many non-professional technical careers or jobs that don't require college, and they're very well paid. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to talk about it on this video, but quite frankly, many, many students shouldn't go to college. They should go into apprentice programs and into educational programs and get them ready for high-tech jobs like maintenance or technical work and they require knowledge in things like hydraulics and electronics and so on and so forth. In fact, I spent 25 years training technicians in many major companies in the military and utilities. And if you go to HainTraining.com, you'll see a listing of the subjects and the programs that we taught. We had over 50 subjects we taught. I had about 35 instructors working with me, and over a 25-year period. And what we knew was practical mathematics was necessary for success in any of these subjects. And if a worker knows practical mathematics, much better off than one that doesn't. So what we believe is you should start introducing a child to basic practical mathematics first before you worry about going on to more advanced subjects. This is not what our high schools do today. In fact, they don't do it at all. It's just horrible, I think, in my opinion, what they do to our children. Now, it's going to surprise you even more to learn how your child will be able to learn all the math that they need for STEM all the way through calculus and differential equations in high school if, and this is a really big if, they're taught math properly with the right content, the right pedagogy in a tiered manner. And what you'll be amazed by is how quickly and easily a child can learn all of the practical math they'll need for a non-professional career. But now it's even true for a STEM career. It's how much easier it is. Unfortunately, this is not how math is taught in our modern standard math curriculum in high schools and middle schools. The textbooks haven't caught up with it yet. But there's something you can do about it if you're a homeschool parent or a homeschool teacher. You can deliver your student today the right modern math that's needed for either non-technical, a non-STEM career or a STEM career. And you can do that today in a very, very cost-effective and easy way, even if you don't know math. And that's what you're going to learn about in this book. And that is why, by the way, that I tell you that homeschool math can be vastly superior to public school math. So that's kind of what it's all about. Now, the question really is, a lot of parents don't know this. A lot of people don't know. What is math? Just what is it? Well, you know about numbers. You know how to count. I'm sure most of you know numbers pretty well. And you know about geometry, triangles and squares and circles and all sorts of things. And you also know that there's tools that you need to solve these problems. Now, the numbers start with the counting numbers. You learn that very young, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you add negative numbers. Then you add fractions. These are called rational numbers. And then you learn how to represent them in the decimal place system. Usually by decimal means tens in a place system. Now, all of this you teach to children when they're in elementary school. As a matter of fact, if you're not sure how to do this, you need to watch my Uncle Jack videos, because you can teach students this very quickly and easily, properly. And I might tell you that very early on, you're going to want to use a calculator, because calculators are better than, they're a good learning tool, as well as a tool for actually doing the calculations. Now, I'm going to tell you this. In most math courses today, when you start talking about decimal numbers, all the fractions are repeating decimals. Well, then there's non-repeating decimals, and we call those irrational numbers. Now, those don't occur in the real world. These are a theoretical concept that only theoretical mathematicians care about. So you can mention them. You can say, well, an irrational number is a non-repeating decimal. But the facts are you're never going to use one in the real world. No scientist or technician ever uses an irrational number. They're a theoretical concept. But when you put them all together, this is what mathematicians, they call the real number system. And it corresponds to all the points on a straight line. And that's the concept that we have. And that's what we teach right off the bat. Now, you also have something called complex numbers. And all that amounts to is an expanded set of numbers that correspond to points in a plane instead of just on a line. And it's actually quite easy to understand. And it turns out these are very critical for STEM. So if you're going to go beyond practical math and study any kind of a STEM subject, then you need to know complex numbers. And we cover them in Tier 4, which is where we're getting you ready for STEM, pre-calculus, algebra, geometry, and trig in Tier 4 for STEM. And I must tell you, this is rarely done at the high school level. Certainly it's not done effectively and properly. But it's really easy to understand when it's done properly, and you'll be amazed by that. And in fact, I have some free videos on that in our free resources. You can go learn about it. Now, arithmetic, as you probably know, consists of learning to perform various operations addition, multiplication, division, things of that nature, square roots, and so on. Geometry consists of various physical figures like triangles and balls and polygons and that sort of thing, circles and cones and boxes. Algebra is a tool that's been developed that helps you solve arithmetic and geometry problems together. You use algebra very early on in solving practical problems. And so it really kind of helps you combine numbers and geometry in a powerful way. Algebra is actually quite easy, particularly the algebra you need for practical math. Then you have something called trigonometry, which scares people when they first hear about it. But all it is, in the beginning, is an extension of geometry and algebra so that you can better understand triangles. And we cover that in Tier 2 in what we call the Practical Math Foundation. It just amazes people. And you can go back at the end of Chapter 2 and see the where I explain what's covered in that. It's also, of course, in Homeschooler Today, you can see that. Now, it turns out trigonometry has also been extended then in many other marvelous, wonderful ways to solve many more problems. And you need to know that if you're going to study STEM and get into calculus. So in Tier 4, we cover trigonometry in a much deeper way than is covered in practical math, because you need it for calculus and differential equations and STEM subjects. Now, calculus, which is really an extremely important subject, we cover in Tier 5. And this is a powerful tool that extends the power of algebra and geometry. And it lets you solve many more problems that involve things like rates of change and continuous sums. In fact, if you want what I call a crash course in calculus, just to see what the concepts are, and if you already know some pre-calculus, there's 3 calculus videos that are free and are free resources at Homeschooler Today. So if you really want to know what calculus is about, go watch those 3 videos. It won't take you more than an hour or so, and you'll be able to have an idea what calculus is about. The concepts are really easy for calculus. Now, differential equations are an extension. They're like algebraic equations, except the solutions are what are called functions, and they're an extension of calculus. And differential equations are the workhorses of modern science and engineering. So you've got to know differential equations if you're going to study STEM subjects, and we cover that in Tier 6. Now, I must tell you, this is never done in high school today. And the reason is, the way they teach calculus today in high school is the old-fashioned way with the old-fashioned tools, and it's very hard. In fact, they don't even do a very good job of calculus in most high school courses. Usually the students have to take it when they get into college, and then differential equation comes after that. Well, why can you do it in high school today? Well, let me tell you why. Now, this is a really big deal. Calculus and differential equations are easy to understand and learn conceptually. They're really easy conceptually. What's hard is the tools, the old 18th century tools for solving problems. But today, we have a 21st century tool. It's called Wolfram Alpha. And this makes it very, very easy to do all of these problems. And they were extremely difficult with the old manual 18th century tools that are still being taught today in the standard math curriculum. And that's the main reason why our new program is vastly superior to public school math. Nothing to do with the teachers, by the way, the high school math teachers. It all has to do with the content of the program. And of course, we deliver it with the spike pedagogy, which makes it much better too. Now, I will just tell you this. Mathematics can be understood at many levels. In fact, it's kind of like some video games you might be familiar with. You go up different levels in a video game, and you build on previous levels, and you go higher and higher and higher. And you can go as far as you want to, depending on how much time and energy and motivation you've got. And in fact, in some video games, it's like there's no end ever. Well, math is like that. It's a huge field. There's as much math as there is music and literature. And math is always expanding. There's more new mathematics being created all the time as our civilization progresses. I could spend lots of time, and I'll do some videos on some of the more modern mathematics later on in this book, so you'll get an idea of it. But right now we're just talking about high school math to get your people up through STEM math. Now, as I said earlier, math consists of tools that were developed to solve problems. The concepts of math are pretty easy, but you need tools. Well, back in the old days, centuries ago, mathematicians created tables to solve problems, trigonometry tables, logarithm tables. And these were used to carry out arithmetic calculations. Log tables, for example, were used for centuries to carry out arithmetic calculations. And then they were put onto a tool called a slide rule. It's really log tables on this tool. And that's what our engineers and our scientists used for centuries. Even when they were building the atomic bomb, this is a tool they were using in the atomic bomb era. It wasn't until 1972 this changed. And in 1972, I'll tell you what happened in 72 in a minute. Trig tables were also used, and sometimes they were put on circular slide rules. Now, when I taught engineering at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology back in the late 60s and early 70s, this is what we taught. We taught slide rules, trig tables, log tables. That's what we taught. And by the way, these tools are not easy to use. They're not easy to learn, and they're not easy to use. They're easier than pencil and paper. That's why we did them, but they're still not easy. Well, in 1972, wow, a revolution. The world's first scientific calculator, the Hewlett-Packard 35, HP 35. And when that happened, all these old manual tools, log tables, trig tables, slide rule, became obsolete. And wow, then came a spreadsheet, and that was even more powerful. And then the best was yet to come. Believe this or not now. Now this is where the rubber hits the road. In 2009, 10 years ago, I'm doing this video in 2019. 10 years ago, an extremely powerful tool called Wolfram Alpha was released to the world. And Wolfram Alpha has had a greater impact on STEM math than the scientific calculator did, if that's possible. We introduced Wolfram Alpha in Tier 4. And Wolfram Alpha does for calculus and differential equations and linear algebra what the calculator has done for arithmetic and for trigonometry. Now, this is what you really need to know. Today, I believe that a student should first learn to use the power tool called a scientific calculator. I use the TI-30XA, that's what we use to teach, and we use that throughout our algebra and our geometry and our trig. Whenever we have to do any kind of arithmetic problem, we use the calculator. And you can learn all the practical algebra and geometry and trig thanks to this calculator in about 50 or 60 hours of their time. And you can do it for less than a couple $100. It's very easy, it's very enjoyable, students love it, and it's so much better than the old manual techniques that are still often being taught in high school. I'm sorry to tell you, but a lot of high school programs still teach the old manual techniques that, quite frankly, no employer would pay you to do. No employer is going to let you do arithmetic with old manual techniques. You're going to use a calculator. Now, I will tell you this. When this calculator came out, it was like magic. I'll tell you, if you had one of these calculators 100 years ago in 1919, you'd have been a millionaire. You could have done things that no other person could do. It would be like magic. It's kind of like having a staff of very fast, brilliant calculating mathematicians all at your disposal 24/7. It's hard today for a person today to appreciate just how much drudgery was eliminated. In fact, 99% of the tedious and difficult calculation techniques that were taught before 1972, they're gone. They disappeared. They're vanished. It really did seem like magic in 1970. When I was teaching engineering school, and when this calculator came out, it was a traumatic experience for the professors because all the stuff they've been teaching all these years was obsolete. What would you think about it if you were teaching a subject and all of a sudden it was obsolete and you had to learn something new? And in fact, well, it was just a fantastic thing. Now, learning to use a calculator is a great way to motivate your students, particularly if they've had difficulties. I talk about this back in Chapter 2. If you have students that struggle with math and are afraid of math, this is a wonderful way to get them started. It's a great foundation. It's kinesthetic. It's fun. It's easy. And, of course, then it's what you need as a foundation if you're going into a STEM subject. Now, as I said earlier, since 2009, we have a fantastic tool that does for all advanced STEM math what the scientific calculator did for arithmetic. I mean, I just can't explain how important this is. And you know what? It's so sad. It's not incorporated in any high school math textbooks yet. Not that I know of. In fact, it's not even incorporated into calculus books and differential equation books used by our universities. It's terrible. And that's why I tell you that you can teach your student, with my help, obviously, or someone's help, math is vastly superior to what's taught in public schools today. And even, I might say, at some of our university levels. Okay, now, here's the question. What should you do? Especially if you don't know math very well, or maybe you don't even like math. What should you do? What should you do? You're a homeschool teacher, or maybe you're just a homeschool parent that wants to help your kid. Well, what should you do? Well, you want to punt, pray, give up, or just kind of soldier on the best you can without really knowing what you're doing? Well, here's a question for you. What would you do if you had a mechanical problem with your car and you didn't understand how to fix it, or you didn't have the tools or the knowledge to fix it? Well, my guess is you take it to a mechanic that you trust. That's what I do. I do not do any home auto repair. I have an expert mechanic that does what I need done, and he's very good at it. And he does things I don't understand. He knows tools I don't understand. He has knowledge I don't have, and he fixes my car. Well, the first thing you ought to realize is you're not going to be able to teach math effectively and optimally to your child if you don't really understand it, any more than you could fix your car than you on your own if you didn't understand it. Unless you're a trained mechanic, you can't do it. Well, you can't do it unless you're a trained mathematician. So what you're going to need to do is find a math teacher or tutor that you can trust who can do the job for you. Now, you may be able to find a good tutor, and if you've got a lot of money, good tutors are expensive. If you've got a lot of money, that's the ideal thing. If you're a multimillionaire or just a rich person and you can find a really good tutor, there's nothing better. And I would highly recommend you do that. But I will warn you this, if you've got a bad teacher or a bad tutor, they can ruin math for your child. And unfortunately, a lot of tutors today still just teach the standard math curriculum. They don't know this new technology. So you've got to be very careful. And as you read this book and go to Homeschooler Today, you're going to find out what it takes to be a good teacher and tutor. And content's very important. The good thing about a tutor is they can use spike pedagogy, but they still got to have the right content. Now, I will say this, enrolling your children in a classroom is probably not going to work for reasons I've discussed in other chapters. So, because I said you need spike pedagogy, and you just can't really do that in a classroom. Nobody can. I can't do it. I couldn't teach your child well in a classroom environment with a lot of other children. So, here's what I tell you to do. If you want to homeschool your child, or just help your child at home, go to Homeschooler Today. That's our website. And the easy thing to do is enroll in the family plan. It's less than $1 a day. And then you can start using the content that I'm recommending and the spike pedagogy. And you're going to be a coach. You need to be the coach, but I will be the teacher with the video lessons I prepared for you, with the exercises, the quizzes. They're all related. They're all coordinated. We use notes primarily. I do use for certain topics one beautiful, wonderful textbook written by the great Dr. George Simmons back in the 20th century. It's only $15 on Amazon, and I do use it and recommend it to you. It's a wonderful book. But none of the regular high school math textbooks are being used today. You couldn't get me to use a high school math textbook today. It's loaded with irrelevant stuff that's premature, obsolete. It's irrelevant. They're horrible. They're just horrible. I feel so sorry for the teachers that have tried to teach out of them because it's just really impossible. Now, in later chapters of this book, I'm going to discuss in even more detail just what to do with 3 different categories of students. What if you have a student that doesn't want to attend college? That's great. They go to the military, they go to a technical subject, or maybe they just want to have hobbies. So that's the Practical Math Foundation, and I've already talked to you about that. What if you have a student that wants to go to college but is not interested in STEM? Well, we'll tell you what to do about that. Mainly it has to do with the ACT and the SAT and the tests they have to get ready for college. And then what about STEM students that are college bound? And that's where the real rubber hits the road. That's the really big deal. Now, bottom line is, no matter what category your student's in, you want to start them with tiers 1 and 2, what I call the Practical Math Foundation. That's where you want to start everybody. And you can start them when they're 10, 11, 12 years old, or at any age. I mean, even if a student is older and wants to start using math, this is where you start. This is where I start any post-elementary student of any age. So I recommend that you just get started for today. That's what I would do if I were you. You can finish reading the book. There's a lot more chapters to go. There's a lot more to learn. I'm trying to write a more sort of a definitive work so that everybody fully understands what we're talking about. But all you really got to do is go to Homeschooler Today and just sign up and try it. It's risk-free, as I've told you in other places. It's a family plan. It's so much a month. It's less than $1 a day, I believe. And it's risk. You try it for a month. If you don't like it, you quit it, get your money back. It's risk-free. That's where I would start, because all post-elementary students should start. Even if you've got a student that's already studied a lot of math, I would still put them through tiers 1 and 2 as a review. Most people will learn things they didn't know, by the way. I mean, I have high school graduates that graduated with AP degrees and go back and say, oh, I learned things in tiers 1 and 2 I didn't know. And they certainly learned things in tiers 3, 4, and 5 they didn't know. In fact, there's no high school graduate today in any public school that I know of that even begins to know what we cover in tiers 4 and 5 and 6, which are necessary for STEM. So, as you can see, I get really heated up about this. I'm excited about it. I care about your student. I care about students today. I want them to learn the best optimal math form, whichever category they're in. And that's what this program is all about. So, this is Craig Hain, Dr. Dell, to my students. And I hope that you enjoyed this chapter. And you may have to watch this video multiple times and read the chapter 2 or 3 times to fully understand it. But as a parent, that's what I think you need to do. So, this is Dr. Dell. I hope you're having a great life, and I hope you give your child an optimal, wonderful math education. See you on another video.